Buenos dias, welcome viewers. Today, I am going to ask a question about our old Norse mythology. And that is, who really is the Norse Sky Father? Odinn? Or perhaps Heimdallr? Well, why don't we look into it? For those of you who don't know, the Indo-European Sky Father was the patriarchal king of the gods in the religion of the Proto-Indo-Europeans. Now, the Proto-Indo-Europeans were the population of people on the kind of Russo-Ukrainian, Caspian steppe area of Eurasia. They spoke the Proto-Indo-European language, which is the progenitor of all modern Indo-European languages like English, Spanish, Latin, Romanian, Russian, Farsi, Pashtun, Hindi, Sanskrit, and much more. Those languages, you could probably find a full list online somewhere, but those languages have a common ancestor, the language of the Proto-Indo-Europeans, and they worshipped this god, among others. The Proto-Indo-European pagan religion went on to become the pagan religions of much of the populations that spoke an Indo-European language. So the Greeks, the Vedic peoples, the Germanic peoples, so on and so forth. So who is the Sky Father? Well, in Proto-Indo-European, they called him Dyeus Pater. Now, what I have written up there is a very simplified version of the quote-unquote official writing of that name, but it works for what I needed to work for. And that means Sky Father, Dyeus Pater. Now, of course, we don't know that they actually called him that, but they probably did, because descendant Sky Fathers are called something similar, such as Jupiter and Zeus Pater and, other gods of that kind. We'll get more into that later. As for what Dyeus Pater was, well, it'd be faulty to think of him as the embodiment or personalization of the sky as a natural phenomenon. I don't think it's very useful to think of it that way. When talking about any pagan religion, really polytheistic religion, it's not very useful to think of the gods as mere representations of nature, because that is not at all how the ancient populations would have conceived of the gods. They wouldn't have thought that. They wouldn't have thought in the manner of god of the sky, god of the sea. They wouldn't have thought in that way at all. So it's not very useful to think of them in that way ourselves, trying to understand these gods. But what he was in descendant religions and descendant mythologies, among many things, he's typically a patriarchal figure, right? So a king of the gods, a father of mankind, that kind of male dominant ruler of basically everything, the gods and man. And he typically conquers an enemy tribe. Some sky fathers in descendant religions include Zeus, right, who the Greeks called Zeupater. I believe it's in the Iliad. He is called that numerous times, which means, of course, Sky Father. Zeu being, in Greek of the time, meaning sky, being cognate to the modern Romanian word Zeu, which means a god, such as in their word for the Christian god, Dumnezeu, which means Lord God. But, of course, Zeu, as in Zeus, may come from Dyeus. Not all words for gods or names of gods that sound like that do, however. Some come from Dyeus, I believe is the word, which really means any god. So the Romanian word might come from Dyeus, while the Greek word may have come from Dyeus, but they became to mean very similar things, and we see that in the Germanic religion as well, but we'll get to that later. Now, some people claim that Shiva in Hindu religion is a sky father. He's a spear-wielding huntsman, a lot like Odinn. But, of course, this isn't something that probably most Hindus would tell you if you went to India or to a Hindu community and you said, hey, is Shiva the sky father? Most of them probably wouldn't know what the hell you're talking about. So, but anyway, Dyeus in Vedic religion, which is the precursor to a precursor to modern Hinduism. There were many. Dyeus, his name does come directly from Dyeus, and he is the most easily identifiable of the Vedic sky fathers. So there's that. Now, how can we even establish that this god is a sky father and this god isn't? Well, using comparative mythology, which is defined as the comparison of myths from different cultures in an attempt to identify shared themes and characteristics, we can look to certain pantheons which all derive from the Indo-Europeans, and we can say which gods have the characteristics that first of all gave us the notion of there being a common sky father which they all derive from, and which meet that standard. And the characteristics that are used to meet that to decide whether a god meets those standards, well, there's a couple. Typically, there is a god who is enthroned on a celestial seat from which he rules, a throne, like a king in his castle, typically a patriarchal figure. There are typically, I don't think there's ever been a sky mother, so to speak. I mean, people might think of Hera or Freya, but those are different than a sky father, most notably in the fact that they are women, and women cannot be fathers. Typically there are celestic associations with the sky father, so he sculpted the cosmos. Typically he might be present in creation or for it or had a part in it. And he typically has an association with raptors, like eagles or hawks, birds of prey of that sort. And of course we can also rely on mythology and names of certain gods to also ascertain which ones are sky fathers. So we already mentioned Dyeus from the Vedic texts, Zeus, right, from Greek religion. Ju, while you may not recognize that name at first, it's present in Jupiter. It's where that Ju part in Jupiter comes from, Ju, which I don't know if it was Proto-Italic or if it was just Latin or some kind of older form of Latin, but it was it was an Italic language and meant sky. The Irish Dagda. Now, some people will argue that the Germanic Tiwaz or Tewaz comes from the same root, and that the god Tiwaz in Proto-Germanic religion, who became Tyr in Norse religion and Tyr in Old English, Anglo-Saxon religion, from which the name of the second day of the week, Tuesday, derives. Some people claim because of his name that he was a sky father originally that was usurped by Wodanas, or who became Odin or Woden. Now, Tiwaz may instead come from where the Romanian word for any god, Zeu, comes from Dyeus, which means basically any god. The way that Tom Rousel, the historian whose YouTube channel is Survive the Jive, put it, Dyeus could mean a god whose essence contains the light of heaven, which, any god would. So, Tiwaz, the reason I think personally that it might not come from Dyeus, but instead Dyeus, is because, like Romanian Zeu, Tiu in Old English, despite, putting aside that it sounds exactly like Zeu, is also used in the same way as Zeu. It means any god. But it also means the specific god Tiu. Just like in Romanian how Zeu means any god, but it also, in the form of Dumnezeu, means their god, the Christian god. So, I don't personally believe Tiwaz was ever the Sky Father of the Germanic pantheon. As for the mythology aspect, the Sky Father is typically a father of all men or all the gods, such as in, I think it's in Greek religion. I think it's Zeus who has a hand in the creation of humans. Don't quote me on that, though. But they are also typically warriors. So Zeus is a warrior. He led a war against the Titans, right? You have the Dagda in Irish myth, who, well, really his son more so led the revolt against the Fomorians under Balor. Of course, Lugh also has aspects of the Sky Father, such as his association with raptors and his warrior aspect. The Sky Father is also almost always the king of the gods. And, in Vedic religion, Dyeus was not. Indra was called king of the gods. But almost always, he is up there, so to speak. So Zeus, king of the gods. Dagda was king of the gods, or still is. Lugh kind of took his place. Ancient motif there of a, younger god kind of becoming king of the gods after helping his father or defending his father. Then you have, Odinn, right? King of the gods. Of course, the entire point of this video is to discuss why he may not be Sky Father, though, so that point is null. Just ignore that if you want. But nevertheless, that is an aspect of the Sky Father, is that he's typically a king of the gods. So let's consider the god Odinn as the Sky Father. Well, he has a spear named Gungnir, which means the rocking or the swaying. And it's said to strike all targets without fail. Every time he throws it at somebody, it strikes whatever he throws it at. Sounds a lot like lightning to me. Now, I'm not going to claim that it is lightning, but the idea of this kind of shaking, rocking, long, pointy stick from that, the enthroned king of the gods on his horse chucks down to strike people and it never fails. That sounds like lightning to me. It could be symbolic of lightning. It could have lightning connotations, but it could not. There's nowhere that it's called lightning to my knowledge. Odinn does have a horse, which the horse is often connected to the Sky Father. His horse is called Sleipnir, which means slippery. It's gray in color. When I think of things that are slippery, they often have wet connotations. Perhaps, or something that moves freely and steadily, like a cloud, right, across the sky. Perhaps a rain cloud, something that's wet, gray, or, something. Now, the Sky Father is different from the Storm God. So, but just because lightning may be in association with the Sky God, that does not mean that the Sky God is also a Storm God. And the reason I say that is because, well, if we look at Vedism, right, there are multiple gods associated with lightning. Indra, the storm god, obviously has lightning as his weapon. Agni also has lightning associations. And when Rudra, who is, in modern belief anyway, the same as Shiva, when he leads his hunt of Maruts, they're called, through the sky, they cause storm-like weather and lightning. So beings associated with the sky can be associated with lightning without being storm gods. His throne is called Hildskjalf, or Hildskjalf. I don't know. In Norwegian, I think that'd be Hildskjalf, but they weren't speaking Norwegian in Viking times, so. But it means high seat, the connotation of it being high. Now, I don't know if I believe Hild would be the word there that is high. I don't know if that would relate to high as in status or in a more geographical connotation. I'm not sure. I'm not an Old Norse language expert, so I can't really say. But he is very wise, as Sky Fathers tend to be. Zeus, for example, is considered a very wise god, as is, I believe, even Dyeus is, but don't quote me on that. But Odinn is notoriously wise, right? He gave up his eye. He's one-eyed because he gave the other one up to Mimir at his well to get wisdom. He hanged on a tree to gain the secrets of the runes. And of course, Odinn is associated with raptors. Now, Odinn does not have an eagle like I believe Jupiter does. Don't quote me on that. He has ravens instead. However, Odinn is called eagle-headed and hawk. So he is definitely associated with raptors, so much so that he's called raptors. Now, I don't know if ravens count as raptors or not. I'm not an ornithologist, but they are very striking birds, associated with very striking things. But let's humor that Heimdallr may instead be our Sky Father. He has a powerful weapon just like Odinn does, but instead of a spear it is a sword. And Heimdallr's sword is called Hufud, which means head. Now, does this mean... I believe in the Eddas or sagas it says Heimdallr has a head called sword. I don't think it's sword called head. Of course, I could be misremembering. But his sword is called head. And whether that means his head is his sword or his sword is his head, I'm not certain. Perhaps that could be calling him... Perhaps that could have connotations of his mind being very sharp. Maybe he's very witty. He has a stallion, a horse, much like Odinn. Heimdallr's is called Gulltoppur, the gold-topped. Now, when I think of, a horse that is golden, perhaps the sun, right? The sun rides across the sky like Helios, right? Greek religion. He's a solar god, and he has those nice bright horses. And this is aided by the fact that Heimdallr is said to live in Himinbjörg, right? Which means heaven fort. So I can imagine the golden horse from Heaven Fort being a very striking poetic verse, perhaps, of in reference to the sun. And of course, if Heimdallr rides, the sun through heaven for it. That's a very good way of visualizing a Sky Father, right? Especially since a patriarchal god, such as a Sky Father, he would have a very exalted and bright presence and throne and horse. Heimdallr is also considered to be a very wise god. He gives advice to the gods throughout the myths, such as when he helped Thor get Freyja's necklace back. Right, he's the one that gave them the idea, maybe we should dress Thor up as Freyja. But he's also wise because he hears and sees everything all at once, so he must know a lot. Blessing and a curse, if you ask me. Much like other Sky Fathers, Heimdallr is also associated with rainbows. Right, he keeps the Bifrost, which is the rainbow bridge from Alskarðr to anywhere that is not Alskarðr. He guards that bridge, he summons that bridge. Perhaps it goes through Himinbjörg, who knows. Jupiter is also associated with rainbows. In fact, in some art, he appears in the form of a rainbow. So that's very interesting. There's a lot of nuances here, right? And a lot of crossing over, such as the fact that both Odinn and Heimdallr are called father of mankind. So Odinn, in mythology, carved the first man and woman, Ashkar and Embla, out of an ash tree, I think, and they went on to spawn men, humans. Whereas Heimdallr, in Ríkstula, takes the form of a man named Ríkur, who goes to 3 estates, one poor, one middle, one rich, sleeps with the mistresses there, and begets the children that go on to spawn men in their classes. In fact, humans are sometimes called in poetry the children of Heimdallr, but Odinn is called father of all. So there's some crossing over there. Now, and there's also crossing overs in the fact that they both have horses and mighty weapons and seats from which they hear and see all, and there's a lot of crossing over. Now, I think it's interesting to consider that there might be a day and night dynamic here. Odinn is called the Hooded. He's called Deceiver, called Raven God, and he's called many names associated with blindness. And these are all things which are, dark. When it's nighttime, you could conceive of the sky as being in a hooded, darkened, disfigured state. You can't quite make things out as easy. Your eyes will deceive you. The raven is a black bird, You may be blind by the darkness. Odinn is often associated with things which are concealed, such as the runes, whose name means divine secret, or esoteric secret, sorry. Whereas Heimdallr is called whitest of gods, Hvítaskur aus, right? Which, of course, doesn't mean his skin is real pale, doesn't mean he's albino. In Norse literature, when something was called white and it was high class, it meant beautiful. Because when you're high class and you are inside for most of the time because you have many servants and slaves, right, then you're not as suntanned. So it's a symbol of your wealth and therefore a symbol of your beauty if you are white-skinned as an aristocrat. Whereas it might have been considered more attractive for lower class people to be dark-skinned because they were in the sun working, showed you were a hard worker, you worked a lot, showed you were willing to make that dough. But of course, Heimdallr is also called Golden Teeth, right? You can imagine the shining golden teeth. Of course, gold is often associated, in many cultures with the sun. Heimdallr retrieved Freyja's necklace, which is called Fire/Shining Torque. Of course, amber necklaces are a hallmark of dawn goddesses. Now, whether Freya is a dawn goddess or not is a topic for another video, and a topic that's been tackled many a place throughout YouTube and Google. But that's not the topic of today's video. But the retrieval of that necklace is often very Indo-European and associated with dawn goddesses. So, these are giving very daylight vibes here, not to mention the association with rainbows again. You can imagine, look at the sun, You could call that the brightest of God, the whitest of gods. You could call it golden-toothed. And of course, the dawn is the sunrise. Of course, now it sounds like I'm trying to say Heimdallr is a sun god, which is not what I'm saying. I'm more so trying to perhaps give the implication that Heimdallr may be a sky god during the day, whereas Odinn by night. And Heimdallr's sovereignty by day could be supported by solar imagery. So, to conclude, I would say that both gods embody the Sky Father rather well. I think they both have a lot of attributes of an Indo-European Sky Father. They're both horsemen with mighty weapons who sit enthroned from a cosmic position. They're both considered fathers to all men. They're both warriors. Odinn is a war god, and Heimdallr is a guard. But they both have different connotations, right? Odinn's a very dark god, whereas Heimdallr is a very light god, perhaps signifying that dichotomy. Now, of course, I'm not going to claim outright that that is what's going on, that Heimdallr is Skyfather during the day and Odinn is Skyfather during the night, because I don't think that exists anywhere else in Indo-European religion. I think Hinduism has some kind of excuse me. I think Hinduism has some kind of thing like that with Varuna, but of course it's been a while since I read the Vedas, and I read an English translation of the Vedas, and as far as I'm aware, there are no good English translation of the Vedas. If you really want to fully understand those, you should learn Sanskrit. And there's also a lot of, crossing over of roles. So, let alone the individual aspects of each god that links them well to Skyfather, such as Heimdallr's brightness, whiteness, his association with rainbows, let alone Odinn's raptor-esque nature and his king of the gods position. They're both fathers of men. They're both wise gods on a celestial throne. They both are horsemen. So, I think it's very nuanced, convoluted, perhaps is a better word. Which god is more like the Sky Father? Well, there are a lot of people who are more qualified than I am to answer it. Really, there are people more qualified than I am to even talk about it, but, the purpose of my channel and this series is to kind of get people thinking about some of the more, less talked about questions about our ancient mythology. and not in any kind of conspiracy theorist way either. Things that are more practical to understanding them, be it to historians or theologians, or you may yourself be a pagan and you want to understand these gods, of course, you know. But when I was learning about Norse myth and I was learning about Indo-European myth, I was like, you know, Heimdallr really looks more like the Sky Father to me. But Odinn also looks a lot like the Sky Father. So which one is it? I think the conclusion that I'm going to reach on the question is, well, while they both resemble the Sky Father, they look like two different skies. And that may be true, may not be. I mean, discuss in the comments. You know, all I hope is that I spread this conversation so that more qualified people can talk about it. Well, I thank you guys very much for watching this video. You know, I hope the audio quality is a lot better than the last video. We'll see. If not, then I have it in the works to get a better mic, so hopefully that fixes that issue. Plan on branching out at some point with this channel. You know, I don't plan on making it just only these video presentations. You know, I maybe might do a gaming video once in a while, a video at, you know, some story time thing. I don't know. But probably as of now, I'll do some more of these because I'm interested in these things. Let me know what you would want to see from me. You know, 2 videos. Maybe you have a good idea of my personality after 2 videos. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe you have an idea, therefore, of something that might resonate with me. Something that you'd like to see my take on. Something, you know, whatever. Let me know. And if there's any improvements I could be making to, you know, these videos, let me know that too. So I'm going to leave that there. Going to let y'all go. Thank you for watching the Swakan YouTube channel, and I bid you all a farewell.